All right, welcome everybody. I'm on my record, so now I'm going to share my screen and we're going to get into, here we go. Better with age, right? Mindful psychology, and we're going to be talking about wisdom. So last week, we had these 4 happy faces, or medium face, sad face, angry face. And I really enjoyed the study that came out of Stanford. And I think this is real important for us to soak this in, is that they found the older people over 65, they were very drawn to seeing smiling faces, where younger people were very drawn to looking at sad or angry faces. And this says a lot about aging. I think a lot of times when we age, what's happening is we realize we really just don't want to sweat the small stuff. It's just way too painful to sweat the small stuff. We want to move on. And so we have this ability to have meta memory. And meta memory is the awareness of your own memory, the awareness of your own mind. So it's not just memory. I know meta memory is about being awareness of what you can remember and what you can't, so you can build up a skill set so you can then go ahead and really focus on something that you need to work on. But what happens is when you get older, we get that observing mind. So guess what? I contacted Alan Castell and I told him about our class, and gave him the links on YouTube, and he looked it out and he's like, wow, this is so awesome. So he then said, listen, I have a really good small video, and so I wanted to show you this video on this from Alan. And so I'm going to share it with you right now. It's really quite good. So let's see. If I go to Zoom, I've set it up. I think if I go here and I go here, and we'll watch it together. So this is from Alan. Now, Trudy, I can't see you. You're black, but if for some reason you can't see the video, please tell me by a thumbs up.
I think it's time we change how we think about aging. Instead of thinking about aging in terms of memory loss, we can think about how our brain adapts and compensates to allow us to remember the things that are most important to us. In many ways, our metacognition, or our ability to selectively remember information and notice when we don't, may improve as we get older. As a result, we may use strategies such as writing things down to ensure we'll remember important things in the future. Some types of memory, like episodic memory, might decline as we get older, meaning we might not remember what we had for breakfast 2 days ago. However, other types of memory, like semantic memory, might get better with age, meaning we can rely on prior knowledge and experience. In addition, things like wisdom and creativity can blossom in older age. Frank Gehry, the architect, designed conventional structures early in his career, and now designs creative buildings he would only dream about when he was younger. A selective memory can also help us improve mood. Many older adults in their 70s and 80s report greater life satisfaction and happiness than in their midlife. A selective memory can help us focus on the things that are most important to us. Getting older doesn't have to be about aches and pains and memory loss. If we take care of ourselves physically and choose to focus on remembering the good things, we lay the groundwork for a long and happy life.
That rocks, right? Give me thumbs up on that one. This falsehood that when we get older, things decline and we're not going to be happier because our muscles aren't as strong, that is in our mind. That is part of in our cultural belief, and it's time to change it, because the scientific studies that we have been learning all throughout our book is showing it to be very different. And remember, you end up really acting out what you believe. So if you believe that this is the end of the road and I need to lie down and wait to die, that's what's going to happen. But I'm going to tell you that does not need to happen, nor does your brain want that to happen. This is just so profoundly important for us to allow this to sink in. So what we're going to do today is we're going to be talking about the chapter in our 4th class, and then next week's our 5th class and our last class of the series. But today we're going to be talking about wisdom. And if you guys all just sit there and you close your eyes and you kind of think, what does a wise person look like? You probably do not have a 12-year-old that pops up in your mind, right? It might be someone who has gray hair. Maybe, maybe not. We might die. But a wise person is never going to be the 28-year-old. Very rarely. When we meet someone who is wise and they're young, we're like, wow, they're so much wiser than their age. So we really already intuitively put wisdom and age together. So I'm going to go back to my screen. I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint. And I'm going to go from the current slide. And here you go. I put this is out of the internet. I got it from Wikipedia. What is wisdom? I'm pretty sure it's what I got. Wisdom is one of the most qualities that is difficult to find because it encompasses so much, but which people generally recognize when they encounter it. And it is encountered most obviously in the realm of decision making, right? So you really find wise people are the people who can make the right choice or the most productive choice or the choice that we would say takes everyone's point of view. These are all very prefrontal cortex things that happen. Psychologists tend to agree that wisdom involves an integration of knowledge, experience, and deep understanding that incorporates tolerance for the uncertainties of life as well as its ups and downs. There's an awareness of how things play out over time, and it confers a sense of balance. This is huge. This is huge. When we're talking about wisdom, we're talking about experience. We're talking about having a memory bank to compare to, and then having the ability to see other people's points of view. This is what we can do better with age. So what I really like is that when we talk about, you know, the lower, the middle, and the higher brain, when we're talking about all that, we're talking about a well-developed middle brain, meaning you do have memory. You have to have a lower brain, right? That regulates your heart rate. It's your reptilian to keep you safe. Then you have the middle brain. A well-developed middle brain has had a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge, you know, and has practiced positive habits that are in the unconscious because they're really down there deep. How to be kind, how to have manners, how to take turns, things like that. And then you have the higher brain. This is what we've been developing through our mindfulness. This is what the class is about being mindful and better with age. So in the higher brain, we have impulse control. A wise person has impulse control. A wise person can walk away and say, I don't have all the facts, right? I don't have them all yet, but I will. Maya Angelou wrote something that is really good. I'm pretty sure. And I realized that I marked out all my places in my book, and I think I didn't mark out my Maya Angelou quote, so I don't want to. I will, let me look one more time to see it, and then I'll return back to it. I marked my other quote. Okay. We'll come back to the Maya Angelou quote. I'm sorry. So they did a study, because let's get back to what the studies are, and it's so important for us to understand this. This is so cool. Guys, get this. Okay. They took problems, and they, like, from Dear Abby, they got sent to Dear Abby. And then they gave it to a whole bunch of people between 18 and like 85. And they asked them to write down responses to how they would solve this Dear Abby, this problem. Then they took all the responses and they gave them to professionals, people, therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists, all different kinds of professionals. And they rated what was the best response given. So they found out in the professionals, when they read all these responses, what they found out is the top 20%, okay, the top 20% of the professionals, their average age was 65. Isn't that interesting? Then the 80% below that, the average age was 46. Now, I really want you to understand this. So they did not know how old the people were who wrote the answers. But they did rank them as good answers or poor answers or whatever. The older the people were, they got ranked higher. And this was not talking about education. This was not talking about if they're male or female. It was just a study based on age. That is so powerful. So also think about the top Fortune 500 companies. The average age of the CEOs, right, are between 50 and 70. This is something I want you guys to really sit back, because if you did a test on the ability to do the speed of processing, the speed of reading, this reasoning, problem solving, if you did that in a lab, people that are below 50 are going to have quicker responses than people above. But that's not what we end up picking for CEOs. We pick for CEOs people that actually can make wise choices. So speed is not something in which people embrace. It's wisdom. And wisdom comes with age. So we all know the whole story of the airplane that was done by Sully, and he was taking it, and then the flock of birds hit it, I think, and he had to make a quick choice on what to do, okay, and where to land. Now, Sully at the time was 58 years old, and his co-pilot was 49 years old. And for pilots, that can be considered older. My brother, who is in the Marine Corps, is turned 50, and he's about to have forced retirement. In your early 50s, you have to retire. So they don't even hold people into their 58 years old. But Sully made that choice of landing in the water. And it wasn't a quick decision. It was a decision that had to be made very, very fast. That is very true. But he was able to make a wise decision and be able to execute it, even though he had never landed in the water before. And this is a quote he said. One way of looking at this might be that for 42 years, I've been making small, regular deposit in a bank of experience, education, and training. And on January 15th, the balance was sufficient so that I could make a very large withdrawal. He was 58. Isn't that just awesome? I'm going to go up to here. I want to be able to see some people. It's just so awesome that he was able to do this. Why? Because he had the experience. I certainly, would want Sully to be, driving, flying my plane over someone who was 25, who might make quick choices, but doesn't have the wisdom to execute and to see the bigger picture on how to adapt and make this. This is what happens when we have older people. So let me ask you this. I'm going to go look at this brick. I'm going to stop sharing for a second. And I'm going to open this up. And I'd like someone to tell me, What's one thing you can do with creativity with a brick besides build a building? Can someone think? I want you to get out of the box here. What can you do? Someone unmute themselves and Robin, what can you do?
You can create an edge to your garden.
Okay, you can create an edge to your garden. Absolutely. Something else. Okay, Namira, unmute yourself and tell me. I lost Namira.
Oh, here I am. I was going to say, use it as the doorstop.
Use it as a doorstop. Great. Karen, you tell me.
Use it to lift yourself up from a prison room and get to the window easier.
Okay, so you can use it as a step ladder in some way.
Yes. You know where my mind's at, right?
Yeah,
now.
yeah, you're in prison. I just want to use it for a little kid so they can look out the window. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, Barbara, how about you?
Well, Melinda Lee, who had a cooking show on the radio, she used it to help make locks. So
How to make what?
locks. So it's like salmon that you then you brine it and you do certain things with it, and you have to let it sit for a while and you have to flatten it. So she always did the tin foil around the brick and just put bricks on it. So when I saw the brick, it's like, you could make locks with it.
That is excellent. I love that cooking. Robbie, tell me, unmute yourself. Robbie, you have to unmute yourself.
Crack walnuts.
There you go. Use it as a hammer in some form, but crack food. Drive in a nail. Wendell Liebach, my inventor dad. What would you do?
Well, I was thinking that you could throw it at a policeman, but I'm sure I could come up with a better idea.
No.
That's being used.
Daddy, don't promote that.
How about heat it up?
I'm sorry.
And warm your feet.
It was a vision that came to my mind. You can use it under a table to raise the table up.
Okay, exactly. So you can use it to raise a table. Someone else got something?
How about if you warm it up and put a towel around it and keep your feet warm at night?
I like that. That is very, very good. Very good. I was thinking you could paint them and use them as for books, as a book holder. I'm not thinking what the right name of that is called, but so to prop things up or to prop up a picture, kind of thing like that.
Or you could paint it and give it as Christmas gifts, which might be an idea for you this year, Lindsay.
Yes, yes, I can give holiday gifts. I can say, let it go, and then people can put it out in their front of their yard or welcome, something like that. That's a really good idea.
Just paint it all gold. They'll love it.
We can make gold bars. Oh, I love it. That's a great idea too. That's definitely a good idea. Oh, Karen, tell me another one.
Well, since I'm so grandchild-centered these days, you can give that brick to your grandkids and watch and see what they do with it.
Okay, so they could be a tool of creation for other people as well. Exactly. It's exactly right. Well, I'm going to go back to my screen share, but you guys, what they did is they did this test. Here, let me go to this. This one, I think I actually marked in the right spot. They found out, they gave people this assignment about bricks, and they found out that people actually didn't matter what age they were equally creative. So this is very important. And we just saw Alan speak in his talk for UCLA. And he said that creativity does not leave you when you become older. So speed might leave you, but the ability to create keeps growing and growing and growing. This is part of wisdom. So we might have to slow it down, but it doesn't mean that we don't come up with magnificent answers. And our creativity, because we have so much already knowledge in our brain, that our creativity can go beyond and out of the box of someone who's younger, because they might not have all the experience of things that we already know. And that's what I want to show you on here. So here we go. So in this creativity, wants me to do it this way. Come on, cutie. So let's talk real quick about creativity in the kitchen. Oh my God. I don't want to, it's fun to be creative in the kitchen, but the things that I made mistakes when I was in my teens or my 20s on, how much baking soda, you can be creative with baking soda and really ruin the recipe. That's why people say, my grandmother, she was such a great cook. She just created it. But she had the foundation of understanding what already worked, what temperatures ended up searing things, what things bake things, how to cook things slow. So when she went into creating in the kitchen, she could use that knowledge. This is what we have, and this is a skill that older people have better with age. Their creativity expands, but their knowledge on what works and what doesn't work also goes on. Now here, these are some pictures from Monet. I really want you guys to understand, some of the best painters started to paint some of the most famous stuff later in life. Now, I love Monet, and Monet painted the whole series with the water lily ponds in his 70s. In his 70s, because the earlier artists, they're learning technique. You have to learn the foundation of technique and understanding and experimenting, and then you learn what works and what doesn't work. But when you get older, you already have all that knowledge, and then you have the capability, because creativity, remember I had the brain right here, creativity comes out of the prefrontal cortex. So then you're able to activate that creative, and you then can really end up solving some incredible problems. This is the last picture. I wanted to, out of curiosity, I looked up what was Monet's last picture he was painting before he passed away in 1926. And this, as you can see, it is very creative, and you can kind of see that he's painting the lily pond as well, and there's the bridge. It's, when you're older, you can let go of the judgment that things are right and wrong, and really believe in that, to try to experiment. You're not trying to win the awards from your school or from your boss or to fit in. You've kind of let that go, and you really have found your authentic self. And this is why it's so important to realize that older people have so much to offer, because they have so much experience, and they don't get so upset when they make a mistake. They're like, this is not that big of a deal. We were learning from it and we move on. So important. So in the other, before I go there, I want to say I was looking up before we all started how old the astronauts are that have just gone up, into space. And Doug Harley is 53, and Bob Becken, I think it says it, 49. Well, you'd say if you're 80 years old, you're like, they're still very young. But you know that a lot of times when I was thinking the astronauts that were going to go out, I thought, well, they're going to be like 28, 30, the prime of their physical life, the quick of speed decision making is done much earlier than in your late 40s and early 50s. But that's not who they picked. They picked people that had wisdom. I'm sure they could have picked people that had responses that were faster, but they didn't. They picked people that had experience. And it's so awesome that we have these role models now in our lives and that are being active. We want experience. We want experience to make, hopefully, really good choices. Now, of course, people can have a lot of experiences and point of view and still not necessarily make good choices. So just because you're older doesn't mean that you're wiser. But wisdom is something in which we do develop with age, and hopefully we do, wise. good choices. So here we go. In the last one, I loved how we had the synchronicity of the library. Remember, with me and Laurie, because Laurie, because she saw this in real life, this huge thing. This is why we have wisdom, is because we do have this huge library in our head. So we need to tap into our wisdom. We need to allow ourselves to slow down, because when you activate the prefrontal cortex up here and you're going and you're seeking into your middle part of your brain with all your memory, sometimes it takes a while to get through, you know, all those files. That's one reason why people who are younger, they don't have as many files to go through to figure out what the information is if they've learned something, and we have a lot more files. So slowing it down can make us even wiser. To practice with patience and perseverance is so very important. And sometimes I hear myself or even other people, they're like, gosh, could they just hurry it up, or could they just get their words out, as if it's something that's wrong with someone who is older. But that's not that. Yeah, we have the siren sound. I don't know if you hear that. You don't normally hear that in my neighborhood, but it's because I live near the park. Anyway, so did you guys just see that? That's my amygdala. I just want to take a real life experience. I heard the sirens, and my amygdala jumped in, overrode my thought, because that's the way your brain is set up. Everyone's brain is set up. Then I recognized it. I looked at it. I thought, why would that be happening? Oh, because we have our park, and when someone twists their leg or hurts themselves on the path, they call the fire department to come and carry them out of the park. That does happen, and it's right down there. And so then that flashed in my head, and then like squirrel, I had to like bring myself back to our class. But that is life. And when you get wiser, or when you get, older, you acknowledge, oh, my attention went away. It went away because I heard something that's meant to trigger a threat. Analyze it quickly, not a threat, back to you. This is important for us to realize, that when you get older, you can recognize this, and then you can shift, right? You can shift. And I have a lot of files in my file cabinet saying why things happen. So sometimes I got to run down them. In this scenario, I just want to say why it's so important is because when you hear sirens, they've been marches and protests and riots and all these different things going on in the world. And so I've heard a lot of sirens on the news. So that part of my amygdala gets activated much faster than normal because of what's going on in the environment. That's the way you preserve yourself. That's okay. So being mindful is being aware of it, and then being mindful is then not judging it and going into fear, but allowing the new information from my library in my head. Hey, I'm in the park, and when someone gets hurt in the park, that's what happens. Someone goes out, back to your class, everything is fine. That is the power of mindfulness. That is the reality of our life right now. We're going to be pulled off, and because our library is so big, we need to go through our library to find out the right information, use our prefrontal cortex right here, and make a choice. That is what a wise person, remember our definition of wisdom, is to be able to use the impulse control, the planning and so forth, and to access old information and compare it up. So the other thing we talked about, and this goes with this, I just wanted to make sure we had it, is that we have a lot of information, and sometimes once we have a lot of information, sometimes our retrieval gets stuck. Like we think of the wrong answer because we've had this experience so many times. And so you'll say, well, this happened last Christmas or last Hanukkah. And your friend will say, no, it happened 2 Hanukkahs ago. And you're like, oh, yeah, right. It's because you've had so many Hanukkahs or so many Christmases or so many 4th of Julys or so many birthdays. But you don't get yourself upset. I want you to learn how to smile at yourself and go, aren't you fortunate that you've had the ability to have 70 birthdays or 70 Hanukkahs or 70 Christmases, and that you have all this information to retrieve from. That's not a bad thing. That's called that you've gotten older and you've enjoyed more years. That is not a negative thing. And we need to stop thinking that's negative. We have to realize it's just that our file cabinets are so big. So it's about really giving ourselves a pause and not being in fear. So when we have a retrieval problem, I don't want that to activate your Amy, and then you go into what he called worried well. Remember, we talked about that, I think, in lesson 3. He was talking about there's a lot of people that are in the 60s and 70s, and they're the worried well. They aren't retrieving something as fast as they used to. They go and they activate the Amy or their amygdala that causes more fear. Then we can't get the insight from our prefrontal cortex. We can't get that creativity, and we have it. It's so important to realize that we have that creativity inside of us. It has not gone away, and you can keep developing it. And we talked about that by learning new things. It's so important that we continue to learn new things. And I don't mean just repeat things that we're good at. We want to access the ability to have more creativity, more fun, more enjoyable experiences. And you have to take the effort. And that is a big part about getting better with age. What are you doing that's fun, right? What are you doing? And are you exercising? Since I've read this book, my husband and I have stepped it up. We're rocking a little bit faster. He'll be like, we've got to get the cobwebs out of the brain. Let's go, let's go. And it's so cool because I realized I just exercising, just that one fundamental thing, I'm able to make myself better by clearing out by the blood flow. It's the blood flow going through the brain and then accessing, learning new things, and to realize that what I have to offer is wisdom. He got into that older people are the most best glorified babysitters. This is out to you, Karen, ever. Because being a grandparent or working with younger people, you get to bring this wisdom to the table. So the difference between someone who is 65 or 85, being with someone who is 10 is so much different than someone who is 10 who's being with someone who's 18. Someone who's 18 will probably sit down and play video games and watch SpongeBob with them, and they will enjoy that. But that's what they have to offer. They understand, the 18-year-old understands, don't play with knives, turn off the oven, go to bed at the right time, they can do that. But someone who is 65 or someone who is 85 and is working with younger people, they have so much. Karen, I think you had to mute yourself, just so you know. So much to offer in that. Let me mute us all. There we go. So when I was doing this whole chapter and understanding wisdom, I want you to realize that I realized the people in this class, most of us, I would say, was over 45. And being over 45, we have so much to offer. And so my parents have actually done 2 things that I think are really cool to pass on the wisdom. And I'm going to use them as examples because I like to not embarrass them, but do shout outs to them. My mom got together and she got my grandmom's, her cooking recipes, right? Now, none of us are big cooks, but my grandmom was a phenomenal cook, and my mom can do my grandmom's recipes outstanding. So then she sent out the recipes to all the families, and she set up a Zoom, and she said to the grandkids, meet me on Zoom, we're baking a cake. And so over this lockdown, they have gotten together and they have now made cake together, my grandma's pound cake. That is cool. So think about this. It's good for my mom and her memory of her cooking and her enjoyment and so forth. And then she's becoming a teacher, which means she's learning something new because she's teaching. So she's thinking out of the box and activating her prefrontal cortex. And then she's influencing the younger generation of the Leinbach family. And they get to know my mom through this experience. And then my grandma gets to pass on. And in the book that Alan wrote, he talked about the importance of the mental health of children to know the foundation of their family. So she's actually helping the foundation of their mental health through this experience. That is so cool. Now, of course, my dad just couldn't let my mom get away with this without him doing something. So what my dad started, because he's an inventor, he started an invention club. And he invited not only his grandchildren, but his sister-in-law's grandchildren, so great nieces and nephews, to the Inventors Club. And they all are now inventing through Zoom a game, you know? So inventing makes my dad learn something new, but he's activating them as well. He's passing on the wisdom. And this is the big part is I want to put out, and it's so important today, is that in the chapter is to realize that we get better with age because we have wisdom. But now we have responsibility with the wisdom. And now we need to pass it on. And I think Laurie, I always say Laurie, I'm so sorry, Laurie. Laurie has been writing. She wrote this beautiful, well, here, Laurie, get on and tell everyone what you wrote. I don't need to say.
Oh, well, I wrote all about the memories of my husband who passed, of our whole marriage and having kids and all the trips we took and all this stuff, and about his adventures in Africa when he was in the Peace Corps. Turned out to be 100 pages. And then I went through the photo albums and I took pictures. I don't know if I sent those to you because I did that later after I wrote that.
I don't say pictures.
I took pictures of all the kids and, you know, all the different things we did. And also I included his pictures that he took when he was in the Peace Corps in Africa. And that turned out to be 300 pictures.
Oh my gosh.
Anyway, I did this all for the grandkids. So I sent that out. And
it is a perfect example. You did it for yourself as well. So I want you to say, because you are cultivating using your brain, staying alert, cultivating the wisdom of your life, and then you're sharing it. That is awesome. This is the gift. And it doesn't, you know, if you don't necessarily have your own children, that's fine. I don't have, I have one grandchild, but he's really little right now. But you can cultivate and do classes and teachings, and you know there's many things you can do. You can volunteer and so forth. But the bottom line is we need to embrace the wisdom we have and not to dismiss it, and to realize that when we actually see people that have made great changes in this world, you'll find that the youth make great changes. So if you look at people who are marching, the majority of the people are the youth. And back in the 60s, it might have been us, or the 70s. We were the ones who were the young who were marching and making great changes. But there's our physical actions. Intellectual actions, that is where we excel. We excel in intellectual. The big part about it is that it's okay to take it slowly. To embrace that the reason why we're slower is that we have a lot going on in our mind. We have a lot to think about, to cultivate it. We don't have to be trying to compete against the 28-year-old who's creative. It doesn't matter. We have so much more. It's not a competition. It's different. See, the 28 or someone who is young, one thing that they have is they don't have the limitations of what we already know. So Einstein made some of his best discoveries much earlier in his career. because he wasn't boxed in with a belief system in some way. You know, that things are already set in motion and we have to build on that motion. He started from a whole new idea. So that's one good thing. The poor people in their 40s and 50s, me, 30s, they know too much to know something new, but they don't know enough to be totally creative. You see? So we've actually came out on the other end. So now we can release the judgments and we can get creative and we can get excited and we can embrace, you know, being better with age. Who else here? I'd like someone, if they can unmute themselves. What have they done recently, because we've had to stay home, that you would consider is wisdom and creativity? Either way you want to say it. Could someone share something they did? All right.
I have something.
Oh, good, Trudy. Tell me. I'd like to hear.
I have a small pond in the backyard that has been raided by raccoons since I first put it in. So I'm in the process of redesigning it and coming up with a method to have it function the way I want to in the daytime, but keeping the critters out at the nighttime so that I don't have to replace any more equipment.
Perfect. That is so perfect. And that's one thing I think is really important. Some people say, how do I become creative? Start with the problem first. Identify a problem that you have. I'm stealing this from my dad. Identify with a problem that's happening in the world, and then see if your creativity, your part of your expertise can come and influence that problem. So sometimes people might say, well, I'm going to paint. So then they're going to say, well, I'm going to paint and therefore I'm going to be creative. Okay, so now you're starting from the foundation of creativity and moving forward. Some people say, I'm going to start with a problem, and how can I solve this problem with the gifts of the wisdom I have? So for painting, I'll say an example. People have been painting rocks and leaving them around our neighborhood, but I think they've been doing this in many neighborhoods and hopefully all across the world. It's awesome. The problem is that people want to feel connected and they want to share their love, and they can't hug people and they can't have that interaction. So then someone who was a painter said, I want to reach out and touch people and I don't know how to do it. How do I do that? Oh, I paint rocks and then I leave them with a random act of kindness around the neighborhood. You see? So sometimes we have to start with the problem and then see what's in our library and activate it that way. Sometimes we'll see what's in our library, which is what Laurie did. She had a library of knowledge of her family, and how can she get that out? She did it by writing a book. But it can go both ways. But we all have something. You want to find people that are happy when they're older. They're doing something and they feel purpose and meaning in what they're doing. If it's just, you know, like Trudy's doing, she's making a beautiful pond. She's contributing to nature. But she doesn't want to kill the raccoons, but she wants to make sure that they're not killing her fish and her plants in her pond. So she has the problem, and now she's going to hit her library and see what resources she can with her wisdom. I'd love to hear from someone else. How about I'm going to put Jackie and Dennis on the call. What have you guys done that you would consider has shown wisdom and creativity, just creativity in the last 2 months? But you're going to have to unmute.
Well, I don't know about creative, but because of the Zoom classes with the we've had to make exercise room where there wasn't any, and put an exercise cycle into the dining room. And how can that fit? Take the leaf out so it's more of a card table size, and it's quite the new look. But it's like, okay, we've got to solve this. It's not creative, but for us it is.
No, that's creative, because some people would just sit down and say, I can't do it. They well, he got over it. You say a dining room is for a dining room. It's not an exercise room. But you guys had a problem, and then you had to, with time, figure out what it is. This is how we're going to make people ask, Lindsay, how can I help the world as it's changing right now? Everyone, we got 13 people in this call, and hopefully some other people see it. Every single one of us has wisdom and has a heart and has the ability to act with love. The answer is you can think of something. You know, we can do it together. We might not be the ones marching, but we can be the ones who are supporting the marchers, or who are making sure that I'm going to be creative in that as much as I want to respond to someone in a negative way, if I feel like they're not being part of the solution, they're being part of the problem, I need to make sure that I am not being part of the problem by responding in that way. So I need to be mindful. So can we practice our wisdom and can practice our creativity in activating our wisdom to listen and to lean in and to help people, even if it's that what we're doing is being silent? Because see, and I don't mean silent that we're not saying things are right or wrong or having a stand, but sometimes people need to be heard that are in pain. And I can practice not being reactive. I guess that's the word I want to say better. Instead of saying silent, I'm going to say I'm not going to be reactive. That is a skill, and it comes with age. And a lot of people are going to be looking at us and saying, what are you doing? We cannot be feeding the fear. We need to practice our mindfulness and say, yup, especially us, not so much me, because I didn't march and wasn't part of the civil rights movement in the 60s. I'm too young. But those of you who are in your 70s are not too young, right? You know what these young people are feeling right now. You lived it too. You know exactly what they're feeling. That is in your library. So activate that library and reach out and have compassion and support the people and tell them that yes, by you marching or by whatever it is that you want to express, but do it in a proper way, because you've already lived it. And if you personally didn't live it, you had friends and family that did live it. You know, you lived through a very hard time. I wanted you all to know, people in their 70s and their 80s lived through when Martin Luther King got shot, when the Kennedys got shot, you know, the civil rights, Vietnam. That was a very, very contentious time. Okay, and great change did happen, but not necessarily enough. We're kind of in that same boat right now, right? Thank goodness. Well, you know, that we haven't had people assassinated, but we have the virus that's making everyone feeling very vulnerable. And so it's time for change. It's time, it's happening. It's very similar. You guys have been there. You have it in your library. So bring that wisdom from the past and what you did in the past that was helpful. Do it again. Or what didn't work. Go, that didn't work. You know, complacency doesn't work. So we know that. Also, making a change and then forgetting about the change, which is a lot of things that in American culture we do, is we get all hyped up about something and then we step away and we're like, and we let it go. So we need to make some permanent change. But you guys in your 70s and 80s have something to say because you have lived through it. So be proud of that wisdom you carry and come from your heart. That's why we're in mindfulness, is about being able to not live in the Amy, but live in the prefrontal cortex. So that's where I'd like to end the class today. If anyone would like to say anything on that note, I'm more than welcome to have you say something. But, oh, Wendell wants to say something.
Yeah, I just want to mention that our community where we live in Florida, which has about 2,500 residents, has been very good about asking all of us retired folks to be creative. And they have done that in 2 ways most recently. We have a new building that's being built, and they wanted to have a art show when the building is open. And so they've opened up a art contest for all of the residents. And they asked us, we had to submit things back in April to be judged. And then there are about 90 people who ended up having their art entered. Well, I'm not much of an artist, but I thought maybe I could get my 3D printer to work and create some art. And sure enough, I did. And that was very interesting. The other thing that we ended up doing was, are we shutting down?
Yeah.
The other thing that they did was actually end up having a writing contest to follow up on the art contest. So our community is encouraging.
Oh, you got stuck, Dad. Dad's stuck, but I think what he was saying to encourage creativity, because they know that it's part of being better with age and growing the prefrontal cortex, having purpose and meaning, and being happier. So on that note, we have our last class next week, our 5th class, and I have a this is a teaser. I have a very, very important thing I'm going to talk about that's mandatory with Better Than Age, Better with Age. So we already know that exercise is important, walking is important, being creative is very important, learning new skills are important. But I got one more. You got to tune in. And I want to thank everybody so much for showing up. We are a wonderful Sangha, and I think you're wonderful. And I'd like to say namaste and peace and love and higher thinking and mindfulness to everyone. Thank you so much.
Lindsay. Thank you, Lindsay. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Namaste.